The Statue of Liberty is an iconic American symbol that we associate with immigration, but that wasn't her original message. Her original message meant so much more, and it was a message only a woman could deliver. So let's understand why the Statue of Liberty had to be a woman, and why that part of her history isn't being told anymore. Most people will stop researching when they learn that liberty is derived from the ancient Roman goddess Libertas, who was the goddess of freed slaves. In ancient times, when slaves were freed, their heads were shaved and they were given a conical felt cap to wear. So this is why earlier portrayals of liberty are of a woman wearing a flowing classical gown, holding a liberty pole with a liberty cap on top. Individual freedom from tyranny and self-determination were founding principles of the United States, which is why the word liberty is found everywhere. But slavery kept the United States from living up to its ideals, because it seems men, no matter how noble or principled, always fell short. Ironically, it was a young, educated slave named Phyllis Wheatley who gave us Columbia as the personification of America, embodying all of its ideals and aspirations. And Columbia exercised her moral superiority to help the United States turn a corner and begin to deliver on its founding principle of liberty for all. So at the end of the Civil War and the passage of the 15th Amendment, the United States was ready to start a new chapter. The French political thinker and staunch abolitionist Edouard de Bouillé proposed the idea of a gift of a great monument from France to the United States to honor President Lincoln and the end of slavery. But he also had a larger objective. He wanted to inspire people all over the world, and especially the people of France, to continue their democratic revolutions against tyranny. After several years, he teamed up with the French sculptor Auguste Bartholdi to create their monument. For Bartholdi, the timing was perfect because he just learned that the lighthouse he designed for the entrance of the newly completed Suez Canal wasn't going to be built. His design, which he called Egypt Brings Light to Asia, was a colossal statue reminiscent of the Colossus of Rhodes. Now here's where the historical accounts are conveniently uninquisitive. Even though the Colossus of Rhodes was a man, Bartholdi's new Colossus was a woman. Why? The answer is found in the now politically incorrect concept of true womanhood, which dominated 19th century Western culture. According to true womanhood, women have moral superiority over men and shine a bright light out into the dark world created by men. So given this, Bartholdi's Colossus could only be a woman. Bartholdi transferred many of the ideas from his lighthouse to his new project, which he named Liberty Enlightening the World. And in the spirit of goodwill, the design steered away from images overtly associated with slavery and revolution. So instead of Liberty carrying a sword and wearing a liberty cap, she carries a torch to shine the light of freedom out over the 7 seas and 7 continents, symbolized by the 7 spikes in her crown. And the broken chains she originally held in her left hand were replaced with a book. But chains remain part of the design. Adjacent to her right foot is a grounded chain, and a broken shackle emerges from under her gown. As she walks forward, she takes her first free steps to spread the light of freedom out into the world. So even though concealed, liberty enlightening the world is forever connected to the end of slavery and rising up against tyranny. But today the statue's connection to those principles and its idea that women shine a bright light out into the world are practically lost. They're obscured by a newer image of a stationary greeter to immigrants. How did that happen? And more importantly, is it a more evolved concept of the American ideals, or one that men exploited for their own purposes? The Statue of Liberty's tie to immigration began with an 1883 New York fundraiser for the construction of the statue's pedestal, when Emma Lazarus, a well-known and successful poet, submitted a poem, The New Colossus. But living in New York City and being almost 20 years removed from the Civil War, Emma's focus wasn't on slavery, Reconstruction, or equal rights for African Americans. Instead, her poem reflected her relief work with impoverished Jewish refugees who fled anti-Semitism in Russia. And so the words of her poem didn't look back at the unfinished work of the Reconstruction era, but to the present conditions of America's Gilded Age. For America, the Gilded Age was a period of rapid economic growth, with factories popping up all over the North and the Transcontinental Railway opening up the vast lands in the West. America needed people, lots of people. So it openly welcomed the new immigrants, cast off from the poor Southern and Eastern European countries. And it's these new immigrants that Emma Lazarus refers to with her famous words. But there are more words in her poem that point to another significant change that was affecting the influence of women in a democracy. The idea that women shine a bright light out into the world gave women a unique power. And it's this feminine power that Columbia, freedom, liberty, and justice stand for and defend that make democracy possible. But women wanted to be more than ideals. They wanted equal rights with men, which challenged men's stature in the public sphere. So in the last decades of the 19th century, these feminine icons saw themselves being replaced with the growing image of Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam represented a bureaucratic and paternalistic government that wanted to take its place along the other major players on the world stage. So he shrewdly crafted his image as the embodiment of moral courage who didn't need Columbia's feminine wisdom. But with all the skeletons in his closet, it was a false image. With America now represented by a man and a woman, it was inevitable that Uncle Sam and Columbia assumed traditional roles. Uncle Sam was the paternal benefactor who, carrying white man's burden, gathered up the less fortunate children of the world as part of his protectorate. But soon he had more children than he could handle. So he turned them over to Columbia to take care of because, well, she's a woman. And Columbia's image evolved from wise counselor to presidents to Uncle Sam's maternal caretaker. And being a woman, Liberty wasn't going to escape the image change either. Her role to spread enlightenment all over the world was taken over by Uncle Sam because he needed her to stay home, welcome his newcomers, and play the role of diplomatic wife. So by 1901, when Emma Lazarus' friend found her poem and began her efforts to memorialize Lazarus and her poem, Uncle Sam had secured his image as the face of America. And with that accomplished, the age of man finally arrived, and Columbia and Liberty became nothing more than cheerleaders to celebrate the glorious age of man. So even though the words of the new Colossus perfectly portrayed the new surge of immigrants, a paternalistic Uncle Sam saw another opportunity in adding the poem to the Statue of Liberty. A few simple words would forever cast Liberty into a maternal role and secure his position as the ultimate American icon. This is why we need to remember that Liberty enlightening the world is about so much more than immigration. She's a reminder to all of us of the role of women in making democracy possible. Liberty and her sword-carrying sisters act with true moral superiority and remind us that the higher ideals and aspirations of mankind can never be achieved by men alone. They require feminine wisdom and equality. This is Dot Callahan, asking you to help me turn the woman in the room into the women in the room. Sign up for my newsletter, subscribe to my YouTube channel, or find the Woman in the Room on Facebook. It's up to you. Just keep watching and sharing my videos. To get advice from a woman who's been there, dealt with that, and knows what works.